Please put together your hands for Alan Etkin.
I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff I shared yesterday, but I'd like to go deeper into some of those analytic numbers that I showed yesterday. So this presentation is going to be a bit of a mix. I'm going to get geeky on you, and then I'm going to stay high. Most of the search work is actually at the marketing level, but there's some foundational stuff that if you're into the geeky stuff, you'll appreciate. So let's get going here. Value of site search. Yesterday I shared the example of how we discovered the amount of traffic and value that site search was generating for us internally. And that combined with this stat right here, which is pretty interesting. This is from a survey that was done in the States by a company called Ruffalo Noel Levitz. This is the self-stated use of site search by seniors and juniors, high school students about to go in. About 50% of them are saying that they use site search, right? So they're coming to your university website and they're searching for something on your university's website search system. My data on the use of search shows that the numbers are lighter. This is a great social research thing where self-professed numbers are always a bit, be wary of those self-professed numbers. But it still represents a fair portion of your traffic that's using this tool. So it makes sense for us to focus our efforts on making the results of those searches really good, right? Serve the needs. Now, these stats here, I'm going to get geeky a bit on this one. Our site average for the user conversion rate, 3.5%, versus those who use internal search, 18.3%. So if you're in the marketing side, those are very high conversion rates. The per user goal value, which I talked about yesterday, $28 for site average, $146 for those who use search, right? So really a significant contribution to your business for those who are actually typing in the name of a program, the name of perhaps the admissions process, a name of an individual. So to get geeky on you here, the user conversion rate, these are calculated. Conversion rate is a number that you can get out of Google Analytics. By default, Google Analytics gives you a session rate. A session rate is an individual visit. This is a custom metric that I've calculated using a tool called Google Data Studio. And what it is it represents the ability to track an individual over time. Given the long time to conversion in higher ed, like you're dealing with perhaps a year, 6 months to a year, before somebody, they're investigating and then they make themselves known and then they might apply within that period of time. So by using this custom metric, I'm able to see behavior over time, which is typical to the high school environment or the university environment. If you're selling a product, the session conversion rate makes sense. That's the standard in Google Analytics again. It doesn't make sense for higher ed. So if you compare if you go into your site, if you've got goals set up and you look at conversion rates, you're going to see quite a low number. That's why this is higher. It's more accurate. So I'm tracking for these ones, this is over 12 months. Same with the goal value. The goal value is also a custom metric that's calculated in Google Data Studio. And it gives me a much better idea over time of an individual's, say, 100 visits to our website, not a single session. Make sense? Sort of? Okay, so because there's a high volume of students doing searches on your site, and there's a high value to that activity for your business, it's really a big opportunity. So how do we get started here? This is the example I shared yesterday. This is what caught our attention. We knew that site search was valuable to us. We saw these numbers where we made that design change, and traffic dropped. We saw this fairly significant drop in goal value as a result of that. And it got us thinking about, okay, so this is more important than we thought, site search. What can we do to improve our experience? That's the look of our homepage, big honkin' search box. It's in our global navigation everywhere. When it goes to mobile, it changes to the magnifying glass to respect the space of the screen. For the look of our search results page, we put a fair bit of effort. If you look at this, it might make you think of something like Google search results, perhaps. We borrow liberally from examples that we find out there. We know that folks are putting millions of dollars into research on the usability of their websites. So we'll always look to those examples. We know that their budgets are bigger than ours for the research. So we'll look and we'll borrow. We test it on our students to see what's working for them. And we boiled down the Funnelback higher education package, if you're familiar with it, to this, which is quite a reduction. I think we might have shocked the Funnelback folks with all the features that we have available to us, the way we simplified their tool. You can see that we've got faceted search across the top, different categories. I'll get into that in a minute. So we put a bunch of effort into designing the look of our search results, and we did it on Google's appliances. So anybody have that experience with Google's appliances? Yeah. So Google sold these boxes. They're basically black boxes that you install on your system. It does site search for you. And then they discontinued support for it. So they gave us a firm date that as of this date, we will no longer help with anything. And because it's a black box, you can't do anything. So we had a deadline. We had to find a different solution for our search tool, internal. And it became a developer's task. And our development team looked around. We wanted to host it internally. And they chose this tool here, which is widely used. It's cheap. And they implemented it to the best of their ability. We put a fair bit of time in doing the user experience, making sure it all worked. And then what we found is that the results were really substandard. The tool is super powerful, but requires a very high level of expertise to configure it to actually give you the results that you want. You have collections of content, and you can prioritize those collections to say, surface the product, which is what we wanted to do. So what we did is we prioritized programs and courses, and then when someone was searching for parking, up came all our programs and courses with reference to parking, right? And some of those were technical terms that were as part of the course content. It was crazy, and we were getting a ton of complaints about it. We went to the vendor to try to get support, and they had very limited support for us, saying, well, read the manual, you can figure it out. So after a year, we figured, okay, this route is not going to be a good one for us. We just don't have the internal skilled resources to configure this tool. We're getting a lot of complaints. It's costing us in credibility in the organization. And we hunted around, and we came across Funnelback. I guess I had run into them a few times at conferences and got the sample socks. It's like that was the selling thing. We looked at Funnelback, and we were going through a selection process. And Funnelback, as part of that process, pointed their search appliance at our site externally with basically a vanilla configuration out of the box. And then we compared the results of what they came up with versus what we were getting from search blocks. And it was so much better. It was just an absolute no-brainer for us. And it also, we knew that going into it, if it's giving us those results without any configuration, it wouldn't require the technical support to maintain it. So we jumped in. In the capabilities of the tool, like I said, we kind of dumbed down what their educational package offers to this. We've got faceted search. We've got promoted results. If there's a single page that we want to have up at the top that we can't get up to the top by search engine optimization techniques, we can just push it. So sometimes we'll do that. Certainly in an emergency, we'll do it if we want to get content up. We also use contextual banners targeted. So this is the search results for business intelligence programs, and we're promoting free information sessions contextually with those results. And we can target any kind of promotion to any search word that we want. It's a step towards personalization. I think Brett was talking about this yesterday in the capabilities of the tool. We also have customized all of the configurations to track the click-through rates on each of those banners and the conversion rates on them. So we're getting a sense of what that data is worth to us. Here's an example of our course results page. We can do contextual messaging to students, just up on the right there, promoting the concept of register for a program and become part of a cohort. Don't compete for courses with other students. You get them free. Like that kind of messaging, sublime. And then in the case of our search for courses, we offer, I think we're up like 1,200 different courses right now. So it makes sense to filter it further to provide more filtering capabilities. So these are the kind of decisions that we went through as we were implementing the tool. We also very lightly use ads, call them ads. They look like the ads that you see in page search results. We find that there's an ad blindness, so people skip over them. So we use them very sparingly for important things. So if there's a fire, or there's an emergency, or there's an active shooter, if anybody puts those kind of search terms into our search box using a synonym function, this will appear with the phone number for safety and security. We use it in a few cases. So once we got it in place and configured it, we saw an enormous jump in performance and a decrease in complaints, which was really satisfying, and then an increase in compliments, which was even more satisfying. Our search metrics immediately jumped up in a few categories, and then once we had it stable, we worked on honing the performance of our search tool. So that's what the bulk of this presentation is going to get into now. We identified, from yesterday's presentation, you know that I like to focus in on a few metrics. There's so much data available to you, it'll kill you, right? You'll just drown in it. So what we did is we identified a few key metrics that we wanted to watch. A very basic one, sessions with search. What percentage of students of a session when they come onto the site are actually using search tool? Search refinement rate, which I'll talk about in some detail later. User conversion rate, that geeky metric I talked about earlier. Per user goal value. And then the last thing I'll talk about is the student search terms, how we actually look for what students are searching for to get a sense of what's going on in the community, what we need to improve, both on our website if somebody's searching for a particular term that should be obvious, like, okay, let's maybe put it up on the homepage, and in a timely manner as well. And then some other kind of interesting results which are experimental, which I'll share. Okay, so let's dive into this first one. The other metrics I think are pretty straightforward. This is the one that will need a little bit more explanation. Search refinement rate. Anybody, these are all in Google Analytics terms. Anybody using these ones? Got one. If I search for something, say I'm interested, I've got this thing in mind, right? And I enter search and I look at the results, and none of them match what my intent was. So I'm using these words to describe something that's in my head. So I go, okay, it's not that. What do they call it? I think we've all had that experience with Google, right? We're trying to refine our search results. So I type another one. So it's not business, it's data science. I type that in. So not getting the results I want. And they go, okay, so what do they call this thing? So then I type in web analytics, and I get a full set of results that match what I want. That's a search refinement. And that is something that's in the way of your students getting to the content that they want. Okay? So if you can reduce the search refinement rate, that's a really actionable item you can take. You'll improve the search experience for your students. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, where do you find it? For the one person who knows, if you're using Google Analytics, it's under the behavior section, site search. It's under here, right? And there's a column that's search refinement. Overall, 26% is fine. That's not a problem. If you look down that list, number 7 is 30%. So when I see a bigger number, I'll go and take a look at that content, go, what's going on? Why is that getting such a high search refinement rate? When we first implemented Funnelback, the very first thing I did is I looked at highly searched terms that had high search refinement rates, and then I improved that content. And what we saw at that point on the initial implementation was about a 60 to 70% reduction in search refinement rate. So an immediate win in some really important program areas. So how do you do that? Like, how do you reduce that refinement rate? You go through that list in Google Analytics, or you get somebody to do it for you. And you look at that combination between highly searched terms and high search refinement rate. And then you go visit those pages. You go to your website. You conduct the search for those terms. Choose the top 50, choose the top 10, whatever your time allows. And then actually see what's going on. You might find that, oh, that's so stupid. People search for this, but that word is buried in the 10th paragraph on a program description when it's actually the first thing people are searching for. So you just do a content edit and get that search term up to the top, and that should fix the problem. So when you're doing the search, you see what's up at the top, where's the one you want, go do that content edit. And then if you don't have any success with the editing of the content, basically the search engine optimization, that's when you'll promote the page. Like I said yesterday, it's really important to do the SEO work first because that'll help you in your external traffic, which is actually more valuable overall than your internal search. You get both things at the same time. So refine it and then promote it if you're not successful. Okay, so that, and part of what I was talking about yesterday, the social scientist in me, is always interested in the way that people use our site. So you want to put yourself in your user's shoes. And the way to do that is to see what they're doing, right? So this is beyond search refinement. Go to your search results in Google Analytics or use the funnel back search terms tool and see what those top terms are. And then enter them. Go to a separate browser or a browser tab and enter them into your site search and see what comes up. It's like crazy how informative that process is. What you'll see is just things that make you shake your head. Is like, really? Like we're putting this at the top? Sometimes you have the top result for a really highly searched term is just the wrong content, right? And those are the things that you want to work on. So there's a recipe here, same as basically search refinement. You can get the slides and just follow this recipe. And then the other side, because we know our students are using mobile devices, do exactly the same thing on your mobile device. And again, like I said yesterday, don't minimize the window on your browser. Use your mobile device because the experience is different. You'll find page speed, display, all sorts of weird things going on. So here's your recipe. Take it away and go do it. The last piece I'll talk about is the insights you get from actually looking at what students are searching for. Those first stats I showed that 50% of high school students say they use a university's search engine. I mean, yeah, right. Self-reported data is always a little bit dubious. There's a wonderful book I totally recommend. It's called Everybody Lies. And it's about a researcher who's well aware of the weaknesses of social research. When you ask people, they're trying to please you in some way, or they're biasing the results. So what he did is he accessed Google's search data to see what people are searching for in the most interesting way. It's a really entertaining book, highly recommended, and it highlights actually some of it gave me the idea for what I'm going to share with you, ways you can look at search data to understand much more about your students' intent than anything that they're actually going to tell you. So to start with, there's some low-hanging fruit. Beginning of term, go into your records and see what people search for at beginning of term. There are things like bookstore or how to pay parking fines, right? Things that float right to the surface at those times of year as students are learning the systems. So go take a look at that and then figure out, this is what they're looking for, figure out where that content is. Seasonally, we'll promote certain bits of content like bookstore, in an indirect way, parking fines, to students so they can find it easier. Also phrases. In the previous presentations, we talked about like long phrases of, I'm searching for this. Like, how do I withdraw from a class? That's a pretty interesting one. So if you can filter, you can use a regex to create a formula within Google Analytics that'll show you only search terms of 6 or more words, and then look at those ones and see what's happening within the system. And you'll see all these weird phrases, and some of them are, you just shake your head at and you move on, and some of you go, wow, okay, so let's take a look at that. You'll get insights into what your students are actually thinking. Not saying perhaps, but what they're thinking. We've also found that people search for courses that we don't offer, or courses that we offer in a delivery mode that we didn't offer. We offer broadcast communication courses, or programs rather, and a popular search term at one point in time was part-time broadcast communication courses. So we didn't do that, it was just a program. So I forwarded that information off to that department, and they've adjusted their offering to meet the demand. So you can use it from a business sense to actually inform your program offering or your course offering. And then this last one, insights about the mood of the community. This is the one that was inspired by the book, Everybody Lies. I've put together a dashboard. I didn't include it in the slides because it is experimental. And the dashboard in Google Data Studio groups together keywords. Just going to pull this up. It's a search wellness score. And what I do is I group together searches for terms that indicate stresses on the community. For example, withdraw, right? If there's a spike in searches for withdraw, we know that something's out of the ordinary, particularly where we compare it to the same period in the previous year, which is what I always do with the data. Financial aid, it's kind of so are people unstable? Health services, and a whole bunch of keywords that fit under that. Complaint, harassment, addictions. So then I roll all of those up, and it gives me a number to the wellness score, and I compare the wellness score for the period that I'm reporting on to the same period the previous year. And if I'm seeing a spike in it, then I know something's going on and that I should take a look at it. For example, we've had a 40% increase in searches related to harassment. So that's problematic. I looked at the numbers, and I just actually saw this morning as I was preparing for the presentation. So a 40% spike, like what's going on with that? What I actually think might be going on is that our harassment office is doing searches on our website for what comes up when you search for harassment. And I can segment internal traffic out. I didn't do that yet, but I'm going to do that, and to see if that's what the root of it is. And if it's not, then this is information that I'll pass on to our harassment office saying, hey, something's going on. We can see this in the data. And we don't, again, it's experimental, so we don't know the relationship between what we're seeing in the data and the actual events. There might be a time lag. We also, with searches for withdraw or drop or fail, had a 54% increase in the period that I'm looking at compared to last year, which is crazy. That's related to a change in admission policies around for international students' registration on courses. So we changed something that made international students try to register for multiple courses so that they would at least get something. And then they got something to keep their international student visa. And what they're doing is they're dropping the other ones that they don't need. So that's the root of that. But it gives you clues, right? You start to see things from the words that students are using in your search appliance that tells you, hey, I should look over there. So an unexpected result, that one. And in addition to the specific insights we're getting from the search terms, the results we had over the first year of honing Funnelback were these. We track it with a Google Data Studio custom dashboard, which is what these metrics are here. I think yesterday in the example that I gave, or to the example I gave in the value of search dropping over the 7-week period when we took off, when we added the minimized look and then undid it, it was $53 per user goal value for that short period of time. This is stretched out to a year, so the number is quite a bit bigger because it captures more people in the conversion activity. Right? So the user conversion rate for higher ed is much longer. And you can see the total goal value that search is contributing to our business. It's a really valuable tool. And for the investment that we make in it, that we've made in it, in both in time and the cost of the tool, like, we're pretty happy. So from the refinement process we went through after the initial implementation, we saw an increase in sessions with search. That's a great metric. We saw a reduction in our search refinement. That's another great metric. We saw our user conversion rate go up, which is a crazy good metric. That was the increase. And then the overall value of every person using our internal search actually increased, right? So we knew that it was high before, but we actually pushed it up because we're giving them better results. And the bottom line to all that in the first year is that, okay? So this is goal value. Talked about it yesterday. It's not the conversation you necessarily have with your CFO, but it does provide you a really strong indicator that you're doing something good for the business of your college. So here's wrapping up. Students say they search. They actually do search, not as much as they say. They definitely convert. We can see that. Totally recommend putting yourself into the user's perspective and seeing what the results are on your site, and then using that information along with the data you get from Google Analytics to refine your search results. The combination of that personal experience and the data really helps you focus, right? So you don't want to try to tackle everything. Tackle the terms with a high search refinement rate, improve those. Tackle the most searched terms. Just see what's going on in your site. Definitely optimize first, promote second. That'll pay off in your SEO dividends. And then the bottom line on all this was pretty obvious, and we're pretty happy with it at BCIT. So that's what I have to share. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that was useful for you. Yeah, I hope you can go in.